Hmm? Ah!
You're listening to the Run for Your Lives podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And this is the Run for Your Lives podcast.
This episode is the horror comedy film. I wouldn't have ever thought of it as a comedy like the way it was marketed and looked at, but after I watched this, there's several notes where I just said, wait, this is funny. This is a comedy. Definitely. But yes, the movie Abigail was directed by Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillett and released April 19th, 2024.
Yes, this was my choice for this week, and
yeah,
I'm glad I picked it because honestly, I didn't realize it was going to be a comedy until I was putting the doc together before I watched it, and I thought about it. I'm like, what do you mean it's a comedy? Because, that's not how it was marketed.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, the little girl, the way that they were marketing it, it made me think a little bit of the little girl ballet dancer from Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't know about this, but yeah, I definitely laughed. There were some things in it that I thought were great.
Mm-hmm. Just several moments where, especially as I'm taking notes, like that I had to just pause it just to laugh for a minute and be like, that was ridiculous and amazing, and I love it. So many good thoughts on that.
You know, I've really been waiting for these directors to come out with something else because everyone knows I loved Ready or Not. It's a great, fun film with a lot of gore. This one was very similar. I did not see either of the Scream movies they did, but I really, have just been waiting for them to do something in the vein of Ready or Not, and I feel like this one ticked the boxes for sure.
Yeah. So speaking of them, I mentioned this on Strange Indeed, but by the time people are listening to this, that was like a month or so ago. So, so there's more episodes of it out now, which I'm curious to see what they are, but I'm going to listen to it. But there's a new podcast that I definitely need people to check out. I still haven't listened to it yet because it's a little different than just driving around and listening to it. But as you know, me and especially me and Remo over on Strange Indeed, we are definitely members of the Church of Flanagan. Huge fans of Mike Flanagan. And so Mike Flanagan himself has just launched a new podcast. It is called Director's Commentary with Mike Flanagan. And it's literally him sitting down with directors of movies and watching the movie in real time. It's actually like a track you could watch along and listen to them. So it's like a director's commentary.
Okay.
And the first two episodes, because the first one is just an interview between Mike and his guests. And then the second episode of the podcast, which is also still like episode 1, where you're actually watching along a movie. And that first movie that he's covering is Ready or Not, alongside Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillett.
Yes.
So I'm excited to rewatch Ready or Not, listening to Mike Flanagan, Matt, and Tyler as they kind of like have like some extra background stuff to talk about it throughout the movie. I'm excited about that. That's going to be really cool. And I'm sure the first episode is just like a radio silence interview because that's like apparently, and I'm reading it like the bio on the episode right now on my Spotify. But Radio Silence is a collective of TV and film creatives who blend horror with comedy in a way that is entirely their own. And it is helmed by Matt and Tyler. Here they run that collective and they do stuff with that. And so I'm sure he's going to talk about all of that and the work that they've done there. Plus their other movies are going to talk about a little bit about Ready or Not, the Scream stuff, and Abigail since it's their newest project. So I'm excited to listen to those. That one I can listen to while driving around soon. But then Ready or Not, I'm going to have to sit and watch along and listen.
I know.
So that'll be fun.
My gosh. Like, I need another reason to watch Ready or Not again. I definitely am going to do that. That is huge. I did see that Flanagan had launched a podcast, but I did not realize that Matt and Tyler were on it.
Yep.
So, gonna have to check that out. So I'm really excited to talk about this one. There are some great things in it, and yeah, I have lots of thoughts, and I dug up a few little tidbits here and there that I can share that were interesting, but not a surprise really, because Matt and Tyler, the way that they do their movies, it's an immersive experience for the actors that are involved. So I'm excited to talk about this. So we should kick it off the way that we always do with some production notes. It was filmed in Dublin, Ireland, and they used the famous Guinness Manor for most of the filming. Usually they would go into a studio and film a lot of the parts and pieces. They did not. They actually used the house for a lot of the internal shots. The directors, Matt and Tyler, refer to Abigail as, quote, ready or not on steroids. It's a good. A budget was $28 million. Worldwide gross was $42.4 million. It's 109 minutes long. Pake, bring us a synopsis.
All right. After a group of criminals kidnap the ballerina daughter of a powerful underworld figure, they retreat to an isolated mansion, unaware that they're locked inside with no normal little girl.
Ah, yes. Oh, man. Abigail. She wasn't the main character, despite this movie being named for her. I don't think she was the main character, really. I don't know.
Yes and no. This is one of those when we get to the end of the season where it's going to be another, Dan and Abra, or, Nimona situation where it's like, it's like equally, I think, main in my eyes, because it's like this movie doesn't exist without that character.
Oh, definitely not. I loved the opening, too, with Swan Lake. And she did all of the dancing. She learned ballet, and she did all of her own stunts. Like, that was her.
That's incredible. I know we'll get into character notes and stuff when we get to Abigail, but I had to, just to jump ahead a little bit on that with just this note of Alicia Weir, this kid. Oh my God. I was like, holy crap, where did they find her? Like, she is incredible. She's got that maniacal energy and look down, pat, the movement. Like, she knows what she's doing. She's incredible. And so I had to look, as I always do. IMDb is my friend. So like, okay, what do we do? What are other projects? Where would I know somebody from? What else can I check out? And she's done a few other projects, not a lot. A few other little horror movies, and then some other. She's an Irish actress as well. I could tell even just like, it was filmed in Ireland, because I'm reading the credits as they're rolling at the end of the movie, and I'm like, look at all these Irish names. But so a lot of like Irish films and like kids stuff she's done, which is crazy. She's run the gamut, and then like some horror movies. But the biggest one that stuck out to me, which I haven't watched it, maybe I should check it out, is she stars in the new Netflix adaptation, the Matilda, the musical. She is Matilda. And I'm like, never had any interest in that before, but I might have to watch that. I don't know. Like, see a very different side of Alicia.
Definitely. And the directors were really impressed with her dancing. And so they added more to the film so that she could do more cool things. Yeah. I mean, last time I saw a child character so nimble, it was either The Grudge or The Ring. I mean, this was intense. She did such a great job. And one of the cool things that they did, Alicia Weir referred to the kidnapped version of her character as Abby, and this predatory version, the vampire, as Abigail. So that's how she was able to separate them into two different people so that she could portray both sides. And she altered her voice, too, to make it sound more confident, like this adult version of the character. Because as a vampire, she's been alive a very long time. Yeah. So, there's so much to talk about with this.
That's one of those things, either Through Strange Indeed or Run for Your Lives, is just like one of the like small little things that like comes with doing these podcasts, is somehow I've found a lot of like younger actors and actresses and stuff, like a lot of kid actors that I'm like, holy cow, they're like really good. And I've found some like careers to like keep an eye on a little bit.
Yeah.
You're like, where do we go from here?
Definitely. Yeah, Alicia Weir, I mean, this movie doesn't hit the same without her in that role.
Mm-hmm.
I just think she nailed it. And I don't know if you watched all the way till the end, but there was maniacal laughing at the end. So could we get a sequel?
I had that thought, and I'm like,
I don't know if I want one.
Yeah, I don't know what it would be. It would have to be worth something, and where do you go with this story from there?
I don't think you go anywhere. I don't think you can. I think you leave it alone. She's finally getting attention from her father, which Matthew Good in that role was just perfect. Just in that tiny bit that we got to see him. Oh my God. But we're going to kick it off the way we always do with characters. I should mention before we jump in that the cast for this movie was pretty interesting.
Because I jumped in blind on this to where, the cast kind of caught me off guard. It's not what I was expecting for it to be this stacked and awesome.
Yeah. This was one of the last movies that Angus Cloud did before he passed away. We had Giancarlo Esposito as Lambert, who we didn't see that much of, but wow, that's cool. Kevin Durand as Peter was one of my favorite parts.
A major highlight of this movie for me.
So good. So fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And then also, I mean, the character of Frank, Dan freaking Stevens. I love him so much too. And so, as much as I love him, immediately I was like, oh, I'm going to hate this character so much. Like, in a good way. Catherine
Newton as Sammy. She was in this movie called Freaky, which was a body swapping movie with Vince Vaughn. She's been in a host of other things too. I mean, it really was a stacked cast. And I wasn't expecting it either because I went in pretty blind. The only thing I knew was that it was supposedly a comedy, in addition to being a horror movie. And I wasn't sure.
Because I didn't realize who the directors were. So, I was expecting just a straight up, like, horror movie. Horror, thriller, survival kind of movie. I was caught off guard by the humor to where about halfway through I'm like laughing enough to I was like, this is a comedy. Wait a minute. What is happening? I love this.
Yeah, there were lots of funny moments throughout. Okay, so Abigail is a main character. I think the other main character is Joey.
Yeah.
Played by Melissa Barrera, who had worked with the directors on two of the Scream movies, the two Scream movies that they did. So I think those are really the two main characters. I mean, if we go through this from Abigail's perspective, it's not going to be quite as deep just because a lot more happened with the other characters and Abigail was in a room by herself. Not completely just in the room because we learned that she can do lots of things.
Yeah.
So, how do we want to kick it off?
Yeah, I mean, we can start with Joey. I'll be honest, like, I don't have a ton of notes for her, because a lot of it is, like, we get introduced to the character, and then a lot of it's just kind of a group effort of things that they're doing with Abigail kind of attacking them and chasing them. So, like, as far as, like, her story, like, it's very quick for me to kind of just throw in a couple notes, and then it's, like, beginning and end. There's not much of a middle for her in my notes. The good chunk of my notes do go to Abigail, because I just kind of, a lot of the really great action scenes and sequences and moments I give to her in my notes. So
good. Honestly, all I could think the whole time was, don't you dare kill her off, because she's great. Even though she's, I guess, the bad guy, I didn't view her as the absolute bad guy.
That's what was interesting about this, because they're all anti-heroes.
Yes.
In a way. I mean, like, Abigail's reasoning for what she did, it's not, like, pure.
No.
It's not that, like, oh, these people are, like, bad people who hurt others. I mean, some of them are, for sure.
Yeah.
But, like, her reasonings for why she chose them were more because you went against me and the family. Like, It was still a very selfish, like, you know, she's not out for the greater good of humanity in any way or form.
No, this is a game.
She's still running a crime family.
Yes. Yes. At some point, they kept talking about her dad, and I just kept wondering, does her father really exist, or is this really just her? Is she really running everything through a puppet? I don't know. I really don't. Yeah.
So even Joey is like the other main character that like you're rooting for, and you want, you know, even at the end of the movie, you're glad that she makes it out and that she's going to go back to her son and do all of these things. But she's not a good person either, not a good character. Like, she's got a good heart, and, like, she's mostly good, but if you really boil it down to the point, she's taking a job to kidnap a child for ransom because, you know, whether it's because of her, like, hardships in life and stuff, but she's still making a choice to do a job like this, so it's not that she's a good person either, really.
Right. The thing is, though, she took a job to kidnap someone she did not know it was a child at first.
Because that makes a world of difference, you know.
Well, I mean,
with your moral standing, I mean, yes and no.
Yes
like,
and no.
It's
I agree, but she seemed surprised when they were at the house getting what? A child? You didn't tell me it was a child. I mean, and we're talking about a team of people who do not even know each other's names.
Mm-hmm.
They don't. They're a team of people put together by Lambert to kidnap this child of a very shady character, basically. Someone that you don't want to kidnap their child.
Yeah.
But we learn later on that there is something much deeper at play here than what we knew. But in the beginning, Joey is part of this group of people that are kidnapping Abigail, who is a dancer who had been practicing at night, Swan Lake. She gets home. I believe she's talking to her dad. Everyone gets into the house. Everybody on this team has a role.
Mm-hmm.
We have a hacker, Sammy the hacker. Everyone has a role.
Mm-hmm.
A getaway driver, and muscle, and a mastermind, I guess. I'm not sure what you would call him, Frank. But he's
definitely the leader of the group. He's the one really putting the plan together and making sure everybody was doing what they were supposed to do. He was the ringleader, the corraller of what was going on.
And they needed a corraller.
Yeah.
None of them really knew each other before this job, so they're able to pull it off. Joey seemed surprised that it was a child, but she agreed to go along with it. I thought the tension between Joey and Frank was interesting because I started to think maybe they did know each other, and then it's clear that they didn't know each other. But, I mean, he basically tells her not to cross him again.
Yeah.
He was serious.
Yeah, and that was because Joey seemed a little uneasy, like we mentioned, about it being a child, but then still does it. But, right from the get-go, Frank was very ruthless and cold, where he was like, that doesn't change anything for me. Let's still do it. And then, that's kind of their first little tiff with each other, was the fact that she stopped Frank from retaliating and, punching this child after being stabbed in the hand.
Yes. And how feisty, Abigail. I love that right from the beginning. We're talking about a kid, and she is fighting back. At this point, we don't know anything about her other than she's a ballet dancer. She just got home.
Yeah. I mean, I did know because I've seen images and synopsis of this movie, so I knew. But try to put yourself in that headspace of if I pretend I didn't know, then it's okay, she's a 12-year-old girl who's being abducted and she's fighting back. That's great. Good for her.
Yeah. And so they pull this off and they go away to this, is it Wilhelm Manor?
I don't know.
Yeah, that was the name of the house. I started to wonder if we were going to hear a scream at some point that we did not. They travel to Wilhelm Manor, go in, Lambert meets them. Joey is put in charge of watching over Abigail. She's the one that's going to go in and take care of her. They wanted there to be one voice that she got comfortable with because she's supposed to be wearing a blindfold. However, Joey fails the assignments, basically.
Yeah, I was like, Joey seems like mostly a good person. Again, it's like you're still kidnapping a kid, so you're not great. But you've got this son that I thought maybe she's trying to support, but then even learns like no, she's not even supporting him in any way. Like she's not great. Maybe this helps her get back on a better path. But yeah, she's the one interacting with Abigail. But I was like, yes, like she seems like she's got a good heart somewhere in there, but she's not good at this job. How did she get this role? It's like she's just the first thing she does. She goes in there and starts bonding with the kid that they kidnapped and. Let me tell you all about my son, and let's take off the blindfold. And are the handcuffs hurting you? Let's resituate them. And let's make sure you're comfortable. You need anything? You want to know any information? Let's just chat. And it's you're not good at this. I mean, which I guess if this was a normal child, it's good that somebody was there,
being nice,
somewhat caring about her well-being and like promising her the pinky promise. And I'm not going to let anybody hurt you, which. I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead a little bit to it. When that came back at the end, I did get a teeny bit emotional about that. I was like, oh, the pinky promise. Oh, yes. No. Yeah.
Because despite the fact that, spoiler alert, Abigail is a vampire, and she's been a child for a very long time, she did go back to that pinky promise, and there was that little bit in there. She could not have defeated Frank without her help. There's no way.
Yeah.
Frank was just diabolical.
Yeah. Which they brought them together. We talked about it a little bit. She's kidnapped the plan is she's kidnapped for ransom, and then they have to keep her here, and then I guess defend the place from whoever might know where they are and show up to try to come for her. They don't know that it's apparently Christophe Lazar's daughter.
Yeah. At one point, I called it the Belko kidnapping.
Right. It felt like that with the windows, the shades coming up and stuff. And you're like, oh, yeah. I've seen that before a few times recently.
Yes.
But they don't know each other, and they're not supposed to know the backstories, which the first thing they do is sit around and drink and tell each other the backstories. So none of them are very good at this, are they?
They're definitely not. But one cool thing about that, the actors were actually involved in creating their characters and the backstories.
That's cool.
Because Dan Stevens, Frank's real name was Adam Barrett, and he came up with the name, and it was a nod to Adam Wingard and Simon Barrett, who were director and writer of The Guest, which is a decent movie, and a little movie that we haven't covered yet here called Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, we'll get to that one soon because Dan Stevens also in that.
He's in that.
Yeah. So they can't share their names with each other, and so Lambert gives them names and just a pack of rats, and that was great. I love that reference, love the names, because then it made sense. Because I was like, oh, the names: Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., Dean Martin, Joey Bishop, Peter Lawford. And then Don Rickles gets thrown in. I mean, Don Rickles was like a peripheral member of the Rat Pack. Yeah. He was really good friends with Frank Sinatra. And I mean, at least, he could have been Angie. They could have given the name Angie for Angie Dickinson. But,
but no, they didn't. Rickles is what they gave him. It's interesting, though, because if you think about Rat Pack, think about them being trapped in this house like rats. Yeah. Like they're trapped in there. They secret passages and things exist in there. There are different clever little tie-ins like that I really appreciate.
Yeah, it was cool. Dean thought that he was an expert at reading people, but I guess not. He's actually terrible. But Joey was the one that was actually really good at reading people for some reason. I don't know why just an army medic has that kind of, skills of deduction, but sure.
Well, she didn't get to bring home her cut of $50 million, but she did get to bring home $220 that she won by correctly guessing people's something about them that was true.
Yeah. Yeah, she was good at that. She quickly nails that Frank was an ex-detective for the police, and then she quickly reads all the other ones. But then Frank, again, also very great deductionist, hits her right back with the like, oh yeah, and you're an addict. And it's like, great, you know?
Yep.
You see them at odds like the whole movie.
They were right from the beginning, I think. Which built to a great climax at the end with the battle between her and Frank, and also her and Abigail against Frank.
Yeah.
So it kind of built the whole way through. Because you weren't really sure, at least I wasn't really sure. I thought Frank was probably bad. But I wasn't sure how bad until we got to the end. When greed really set in for him.
Yeah.
I mean, and Joey took a beating, like, many times trying to protect Abigail from Frank. And even Peter at one point. So much so that they got super distracted when Abigail was, taking her cuffs off, getting ready to attack them and scream.
Yeah.
Which I tried to find information on where the sounds came from because that was so cool. But
yeah, I like that. Again, it's an Abigail note, but you bring it up. Yeah, I like that where that's the moment where things really take that turn where they're just arguing and yelling at each other and what's going on? And then she just calmly switches that demeanor, that character. And I like that you brought out that like Alicia Ware, the actress, even said like she played like two characters.
Yep.
And you can see the change in them where instead of the scared little girl huddled on the bed like, oh no, she just like her face changes, her body language changes, everything. She just pulls off the cuffs and stands up and it's just like, all right, enough of this shit. It's time to go vampire. Like, let's just.
I need to take more of these people out. This is just ridiculous.
Ballerina vampire.
Yeah, I love that. Right? That was so fun. I love that she even says to Joey, "I'm sorry about what's going to happen to you." Mm-hmm. Because at first you're thinking her dad's going to come in and do something.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what Joey was convinced what that meant.
Yeah.
She was just like, oh, it's like, who is her dad? Because I believe that is a legit threat. She is threatening that somebody's going to come in here and kill all of us. It's not exactly what she meant, but
No.
Which then I did wonder. I was like, because she's being nice to her, again, because I knew sort of what was going on. I knew what Abigail was.
Yeah.
So I was like, because Joey's being nice to her, is she going to spare Joey in the end? Which it does end up working that way. But that wasn't her plan initially. Because with that line of, I'm sorry about what's going to happen to you. I was like, no, I guess not. It's still.
No, her life is still on the table. Yeah. I think over time, Abigail needed Joey to defeat Frank at the end. She couldn't have done it herself. I don't think it was a plan for her to let Joey walk, but Abigail even had to fight or yell at her dad, no, don't hurt her. She, help me.
Yeah.
Because he was ready to like have lunch or dinner time, I guess. It was getting close to dinner time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the last note I have on Joey. I have more, but that is the last one that I have is Lazar showing up. But we'll talk about it. Abigail, convincing him to spare Joey. Even then, it's like there's that bond there, which makes it seem like the end of the movie. It's like she goes back and you just assume it's like and then she goes and finds her son and starts a new life and everything's happy ever after for Joey. But I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't know.
I have a sneaking suspicion. And it's because the last thing that Abigail says is, "See you," or like "See you later, Joey," or "See you soon." See you.
Yeah.
Where it's like they're still a crime family, and no witnesses or people don't get to know the truth about them, and then just walk.
Right.
So they'll let her live. I get a feeling that she's not free of them.
No.
They're reaching back out to her as like, okay, now that you know what's going on and you've proved your worth, now you work for us.
Right.
And you do, like, I'm writing this whole like script of a movie that shouldn't exist. It really shouldn't. But like, I was like, if there was a sequel, it'd be a very different movie because now it would be Joey working for the vampire crime family. Like, I feel like that's really what her future becomes after this. That's the vibe I get.
Yeah. I think she might think that she's free, but I don't. I mean, look at what happened with Lambert. We learned that he, despite thinking he was on his own, he was definitely not on his own. Everything he did had to do with Abigail and her father and the crime family.
Mm-hmm.
And so, well, I don't think they would turn her into a vampire. They definitely can hold it over her head that they could hurt Caleb, her son, if she didn't comply. And Abigail knew already that her son's name was Caleb. So it's like, did she know because she knew everything, or did she know because she overheard it?
Oh yeah, I think she's done. I mean, she knew the story about her abandoning her son and Abigail has done her research. That's how she picked these people. And this isn't the first time she's done this. Anybody who has wronged her family, this is not the first time. This is a game she plays. She does her research. It's Saw. That's I called it the Saw twist because that's literally what it was. It's like, you've all been brought here because of something you did in your past, and you've got to figure out what it is. Like, that's what it was to an extent. Like,
it gave me those vibes. It also gave me Lights Out vibes a little bit. It gave me Ready or Not vibes. Obviously, I mean, it's a huge house and it's about escaping. Surviving. But I have to agree with you. I think that Joey definitely does not get to walk off into the sunset and right all
as
the
a
wrongs.
favor, Abigail and her father probably help her reunite with her son and give her everything that she could ever want. At a price. You know?
Yeah. I mean, will she have to be the one to pull in folks for Abigail to have her fun? Because again, at one point in the middle of the movie, I was just like, wow, I started to wonder if maybe this whole thing was just a ruse by her dad before things really took off. I thought, oh, so maybe her dad planned the whole kidnapping to give her a fun night out where she can go and feast. Because it seemed like something that maybe he would do. I don't know. The other vibes it gave me was, oh my God, the name of the movie's escaping me. Eli.
Let the right one in.
Yeah, Let the Right One In. It gave me those vibes too. But all in a good way. Like, I thought that this was honestly a pleasant surprise, I think, overall.
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect going into this. Like I said, I figured it would be one thing, and it ended up being something different, similar to, like, I was like, yes, that base idea is there, but the way that they went about it was very different, and I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. It was a fun watch.
It was. It definitely was. Giancarlo Esposito does creepy very well, as does Kevin Durant, but his wasn't. At first, I thought Peter was going to be more creepy than he ended up being. He ended up being just more fun, and I was kind of sad when he died. I'm like, please don't kill him. He was fun. Kill Frank. Gosh.
Did you react like Sammy or possessed Sammy? Oh no, she got him.
Oh my God, no. No, I didn't. I thought that was kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, Giancarlo Esposito, is incredible at the creepy mastermind of things. And it's a niche that he does very well, whether he's playing Gus Fring in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, or he's playing, Moff Gideon in The Mandalorian, or even his role in The Boys. that's what he does.
Yeah, he does it well. He was also on a show called Revolution, where he also played a very creepy character. So he does it well. It's his.
He's good at that. And then little name drop. I've met Giancarlo Esposito and talked to him before, and he's the kindest person. He's so sweet. But even talking to him, even when he's being nice to you, there is this air of like, what are you about to do? Like it is just because it's just his mannerisms and the way he talks. Like, you're just like, I'm still a little unsettled. Even though you're very nice and I'm having a great conversation, I'm still unsteady. Like, I'm still like, oh, what are you capable of? He's just got that personality, which is really cool, though.
Which means he does his job very well.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Joey, I'm not sure I really have much else to say about Joey. I feel like the rest of what I have is Abigail and a bunch of other little notes and quotes from different characters that made me laugh, because there were things that I was just like, can you be any more obvious? So why don't we dive a bit into Abigail if you want?
Yeah. I've got a few little extra just notes on Joey. I said just kind of thrown in randomly. As far as, the blindfold, we talked about, like, immediately her taking that off. It's like, I knew that was going to come back to bite her, like, very quickly. Yeah, and you see when Frank walks in, he's like, oh my god, everything's ruined. Just locked eyes with this girl, and it's all out the window now. Way to go. I liked her using the glare from the sun off of the silver plate to make Sammy go boom. And then I had a note, which this was just kind of fun for me, and I was wrong, but I'm still going to do it anyway. I paused it during the fight, where Joey gets bitten, and then Frank is like, and now you're going to become my puppet, and like she kind of gets him, and he's like, grab the stick, and then I paused it, and I said, before it happens, I'm making a prediction. I was wrong, but I'm still going to tell you what I thought, that it wasn't right. I said Abigail somehow got Joey first and bit her first, and she's actually being puppeted by Abigail.
Oh, how cool!
I thought that was going to be a thing. Or if Abigail bit her first, and even if she's not being puppeted, because another vampire got her first, Frank couldn't control her, and so then she's just playing along to kill him. And then I was like, or Joey was already a vampire the whole time. And I was like, no, that doesn't check out at all.
She's been here the whole time.
Yeah. But no, it ended up being something kind of dumber, but in a good way, like to where it was funny. Instead, it's just like, you just haven't learned how to do that yet. Like,
oh my
mind
God,
control takes
quote.
time. Yeah.
The thing about being a vampire is it takes a long time to learn how to do the cool shit.
Yeah.
And hearing a little girl say that, it was oh my God.
There's a few moments like that where it's just like they let her just have at it with the language, which is fun. I always there is something really funny about adorable, innocent little kids just spouting off a string of curse words. Maybe that's why, because, I already have such a soft spot in my heart. I love Christian Convery from Sweet Tooth. And then to watch Cocaine Bear and be like, the mouth on that kid, and I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I really... The dialogue. I mean, most of Abigail's adult dialogue for Vampire Abigail was pretty amazing. Like, just the quotes. Just trying to pick a couple, it was really difficult because the dialogue was great, and the way that she delivered it, and all with the body contorting and dancing. I love how they implemented dance. Like, everything she did was dancing. And
it's very cool.
Yeah, it was so awesome.
Yeah, and then the last thing was just a vampire lore thing that I got stuck in that doesn't matter at all, but maybe you'd find it interesting. Because Joey gets bitten, right? And then after they kill Frank, and she's like, well, what's going to happen with this now? And Abigail tells her, oh, you're fine now because Frank is dead. And it's like, okay, so in a lot of vampire lore, if a vampire dies, anybody that they turned also dies.
In some, yes.
There's lore that does that. And I was like, and And I was like, well, maybe she hasn't actually turned yet because it takes time, as we saw with Sammy. So maybe that lore could still apply. But then I thought about it and I was like, no, that lore still doesn't apply in this world because Frank turned and then killed Lambert, who is the vampire who turned him. And he was still alive. So it's like, never mind. So maybe it's somewhere between those. So I was still trying to figure out why she's okay. And I think the answer is just it hadn't had time to infect and set in yet.
So in some lore, I think, is it Salem's Lot? In other movies, if you kill the person that bit you, you'll return to normal. Mm-hmm. So it really depends on what...
And that one still didn't apply either because, again, Frank.
Right.
So...
But I found it very interesting that when Lambert turned Frank, he bit Frank and then had Frank drink his blood.
Yeah. And I think what the movie was setting up is there's a difference. You can turn somebody into a mindless vampire that you can use as a puppet if you just bite them and then leave it at that. Mm-hmm. If you have that ability, if you've learned how to do that, as Abigail has. And then I think if you're actually trying to turn somebody into a full-on vampire of their own, with their own agency that can then go on and do stuff, then you have to do it that classic. You bite, then have them suck the blood of the vampire, because you've seen that in a bunch of stuff too. So
yeah, I think Twilight.
I wouldn't know.
I did.
I was going to name some other things that I've seen, but then it would be spoilers for those things, because some of those things, the fact that it's a vampire thing is a twist. So that's
you're being very careful, and I know that it's appreciated by those who are conscientious about spoilers. I did find it quite funny when they were talking about how to deal with Abigail. Sammy brought up, well, what kind of vampire is it? Is it Anne Rice? Is it True Blood? Is it Twilight? Like, what is it?
Well, then Frank, after Sammy gets bitten, Frank is picking on Sammy over the walkies he's like, well, Twilight and Peter are going to go, like, calls her Twilight, and then later's like, find anything yet, Nosferatu? Like, he's just picking on her that way before she's even turned, but she's scared that she will, so he keeps calling her things like that. And I was like, it's kind of funny. And
she's not even there for the money, really. She's there for the fun of hacking and doing that, because we find out that she's got tons of money.
Yeah.
But she can't tell onions and garlic apart.
That was the line that finally, like, really clicked with that I was like, because that's, again, I'll read a quote, like a note verbatim. Wait a minute, this movie's legitimately hilarious. And then I quote that, Sammy, those are fucking onions.
And I saw that bowl on the table that had garlic and onions on it, and I'm like, wow, that's probably going to come in handy at some point. That was when Dean was hearing things and going to check it out, which you should never do, because it always ends badly. But I did see that bowl of onions. What killed me, though, is that I think it might have been Frank that said what? No, it was Peter that said what happened. And Sammy said his head fell off. And I'm like, obviously, his head fell off. It's right there. I'm like, okay, Captain Obvious, there we go. Mm-hmm. It killed me. I did think Dean was going to have his own Baby Driver moment when he was driving the getaway car, because of the way that he drove up behind that truck to hide from the camera. I'm like, oh my God, are we going to get one of those? Because he already had music going. I'm like, is he going to crank something up and we're going to get some wild driving? We didn't, so.
No. But now I want to watch Baby Driver, so thanks. I always want to watch Baby Driver, always. So
it's never a bad idea to watch that. You can always watch it. It's wonderful.
Only one of the best movies ever.
Yep.
Ever.
Not appreciated enough for how amazing it is.
Yeah. All right. So now I think we can move on to Abigail.
Okay.
Very good. Which we've covered some things, but yeah, it's, again, knowing sort of what was going on made a lot of things earlier better for me. Because, yeah, it was not exactly fun to watch a scene of a child being abducted by these strangers. Like,
no.
It's like, I don't like that, but then like it helps because I'm like, I know what's going to happen later to some extent, and I'm sure she's not going to seem so cute and innocent and helpless later. So
she's not.
I think she'll be fine.
She was feisty and she fought back, and I loved that. Like, I loved that she was fighting back. But it wasn't fun. I mean, because all we really see of her at the beginning is she's dancing, and her driver picks her up, and everything seems normal for her, except we know what's going to happen because we're privy to the information. But she seems innocent enough.
Mm-hmm.
But we learn she's a manipulator. She manipulated Joey right from the start. Like,
the whole kidnapping was orchestrated by her. She orchestrated her own kidnapping. You don't see that very often.
No.
To where even made it seem like with the floodlights. So at first I was like, oh, whoever her dad is must be really wealthy because a gated mansion with full floodlight and siren security system. But they still got away after that. And then you're like, well, yeah, because that was always the plan for her, was that was how it was going to go. Yeah, very feisty. Has those moments with Joey, but then even then you're like, oh, she's just playing a role. She's playing a character and she's having a blast with it.
Oh, absolutely. I love her comeback to Frank, who was apologizing. You know, we're sorry, we didn't know who you were. We thought you were just a regular 12-year-old girl.
Mm-hmm.
And she just fires back at him with, you were going to beat and torture me when you thought I was just a regular 12-year-old girl. And it's like,
how does that make you any better? Like,
right.
If anything, then you deserve this more.
Yes, absolutely. I loved the whole scene where she's in kind of in the elevator chamber or behind the bar door. And she is playing Frank like a fiddle, telling him, oh yeah, and then there were none, the book. It's going to get you what... Like, she knew exactly what she was doing. This was all planned. She's done it before.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, obviously, Sammy fell into a pit of bodies that were remnants of things.
Oh, the body room. I mean, any good old house is going to have one of those, right?
Evidently.
Yeah, I thought it is interesting, though, that her father was real, as far as, like, there are all of the, you know, myths and rumors and stuff surrounding his abilities and methods, and there's, like, his, you know, enforcer named Valdez, that's name
I know.
Stuff that floats around, ends up just being Abigail herself, which is fun. But, like, as soon as they hear that name, like, it strikes fear in all of them, except for Sammy, which, like, who's Lazar?
Right.
Which is interesting, because then you like find out later on, she knows exactly who that is, but she's been siphoning money from the family.
Exactly.
So she was still in that moment even trying to play it off like, I'm not scared, it's fine, I don't know. Plausible deniability, right? I don't know what you're talking about. But even Frank, who is like the most cold-blooded, calculated person you've ever seen, was terrified for a moment. Like, we fucked up. He goes, like, we're all fucked.
Yeah. And he tries to leave. Like, he wants to leave, and I'm just like, okay, so you don't have any further information. Like, you're not further in on this whole ruse.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're wanting to leave. And if you had more information, you would have known more about this.
Yeah.
And you would have stayed without any problem. So that's when I knew he wasn't any further integrated into it.
Yeah. What I thought was weird at first, but then it makes sense with things that are revealed later. Because I was like, how did they choose this house? Because I was like, this house is clearly in the Lazar family, which seems like a terrible choice of location to hide the daughter of the family if you've kidnapped her. It's like there's paintings and statues of a father and young daughter who is clearly Abigail that are old, and it's just like, they're really bad at their jobs. Why did they choose this location? And then later on it's like, oh, because she did.
Because she chose it. I mean, she's got her dresses there. She's got her own little stage. Mm-hmm. It's perfect. One of the funny things I found out is that Stephen Shields, who was one of the writers, said he made Abigail a ballerina because he's terrified of ballerinas. And I've never heard of someone being afraid of a ballerina.
Mm-hmm.
There is also...
So yeah, Cabin in the Woods and Black Swan, and this would be the movies he hates the most.
Yep. So, inside the mansion, there was a portrait, I don't know if you noticed it, of Tony Lidomas from Ready or Not. So, they kind of put that in there as kind of like he's an ancestor. I thought that was kind of cool how they tried to tie it in there. Those fun little things that they do to connect things that aren't really connected.
Mm-hmm. Abigail tries to turn them on each other, and then it doesn't get as violent as I think she wanted it to. So that's when she decided to just like reveal. But there was that moment because oh well, Joey said, told Frank that Abigail told Joey that Frank told her. There's a lot of
lots of telling.
That he was Valdez, and it's like he never said that, but like she's just trying to pit them against each other and see how it plays out, and it was just those like clever little monster moments.
She's been doing this a long time. She's had a long time to put together what works best, and I think, like you said earlier, I think she just had enough and was like, "Okay, you people, you're being ridiculous. We're gonna fast forward now to." To the cool shit.
Yeah. Which is funny, like, I guess, so some things work and some things don't. With, like, the vampire lore. Which they played with that. Because, like, obviously the wooden stake definitely worked. We got some vampire deaths with that.
Oh my gosh,
and the sunlight still definitely affects them. But then other things don't, which is funny because then you get, Abigail shanking the hell out of Peter with a cross necklace.
With a teeny tiny cross necklace.
Yeah. And it's like, she shouldn't even be able to hold that. It would burn her skin. But no. That's a hurtful stereotype, just like the garlic. She just sniffs deep on the garlic, like, thanks, I guess.
There's one point where she, like, gets blood on her hand from doing the stabbing and then just wipes it on her face, like...
Yeah. That was the moment that I was like, this kid's incredible. Yep. She knows what she's doing. And they're like, they all walk back out of that room. Frank's been stabbed through the leg, and there's all these little punctures all over Peter's chest, and Joey's just standing there with her candy, like a bag of popcorn, just like, and what did we learn?
Yep. Again, she wasn't going to go try to kill her.
Mm-hmm.
I think she proved she was right. They were ridiculous.
Yeah.
Trying to do that. Mm-hmm.
I think Frank over the radio is like, can she turn into a rat? Because if so, I'm looking right at her. And they don't answer that question, but honestly, I think it's not a bad guess. It's left open. Maybe she can, because it would track, because that's the only thing we saw with Dean's death was the rat standing there in the room, and then we heard a sound, and then he turned around, and...
And that was it. Yeah.
So maybe she can. I don't know.
Yeah, poor Dean. His head fell off. The end for Dean.
Yeah. And then Abigail had some great moments. The just fantastic jump down the stairwell. Perfect 10. Was wonderful. Loved that.
Just walking on the banister, or the railing. It was just like, for real? I had to go look it up because I thought she legit had been training as a ballerina. And no, she learned this. So I don't know if she had taken some dance classes before and this was just enhanced by her learning ballet on top of it. But she nailed it. Like I said, I loved the way that dance was incorporated into this. Mm-hmm. And the use of Swan Lake and all of that, I just thought was great.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of the language, moment where she gets injected with the drug the second time before they put her in that little cage, and I'll rip your fucking heads off and gorge myself on your blood. After a nap.
Yeah. It's so funny how she switched back and forth between that character, between Abby and Abigail. It was great.
Yeah. Yeah, I mentioned the Saw twist, like I said, which I wrote down kind of their backgrounds. We have Sammy, Jesse, who siphoned money from the Lazar family, Peter, Terrence, who also stole money from the family after leaving as hired muscle. We have Frank Adam, who infiltrated the Lazars as an undercover cop, a detective, and then turned on them. And it's like, that was his job, but then he also found a way to profit himself while doing that. So
Yep.
That was where that came in. And then Joey, or Anna Lucia, the army medic who got addicted to morphine, and then due to that, was supposed to be helping somebody of part of the crime family. And because she was high on morphine, she botched the job and he died. So, yeah.
We never found out about Dean.
Yeah, Dean or Rickles.
Rickles.
Yeah.
And I thought Rickles did have some moral, he did want to leave at one point. And then, of course, they couldn't leave. And I loved his interaction with Peter, where Peter's like, oh, well, Dean's dead. We'll get a bigger share. And he says to him, you're welcome to my share, Pete. You could be the richest headless man in America.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I'm just like, oh man, I want more movies like this that have the comedic element.
I love it.
It was so just much. Great. It goes up there with Ready or Not, and even like Cooties, and those movies that have that element where it's creepy, but it's...
Horror comedy is my special place. I mean, we did Tucker and Dale, and Cooties, like you mentioned. I love it. I love it so much. I'm going to just throw out huge practical effects points to when the sunlight blows off the arm.
Oh my gosh.
Of Abigail, and then she retreats back into the shadows, and the arm starts regrowing. That looked like that was all practical. It was some kind of tube, and I was like, I don't know what that is, but it's incredible, and props.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we don't get enough practical effects anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is so CGI, or now AI generated. We need more. When they use practical effects, I just think it adds this layer of authenticity to what we're watching. And sometimes CGI can, as we've talked about, take me out of a scene.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was not taken out of that scene at all. It was really interesting what they did with it.
Yeah. Just a few more little notes that I've got. I get the Sammy thing was really interesting as well, introducing that idea that she does become a vampire, but then she's fully possessed and controlled by Abigail. Like, absolutely none of her own will. It's, as Frank calls it, like a puppet.
Yep.
And then so, bye-bye Peter, then.
Oh, such a bummer. I really didn't want him to die. Kevin Durand is... he's great in everything he's in.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me want to go back and watch a movie that ties into the vampire world, or rather a series that ties into the vampire world, The Strain. He was great in that, and I feel like I need to go back and watch it again.
And let's see, just at the end again, the team up that we didn't expect. Abigail and Joey working together to defeat Frank. And then that time you fully believe Abigail when she says, I'm going to let you go free if we succeed. And you're like, yeah. Again, I said, like, I feel like there's strings attached to that by the end, but she did let her live and let her go. And I fully was like, yeah, no, I take her at her word there.
Yeah. I thought that you would, do you have other notes on some of the other characters?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because I really thought you would bring up Angus Cloud, or rather, the artwork on Kevin Durand's face.
I've got some extra notes because I've got like a section on Frank, and then I've got a bunch of just like other notes for other people after that. So
okay, good. All right. Yeah, like I said, I don't feel like I can do it justice by just saying how amazing that the whole Abigail portrayal was. Mm-hmm. Alicia Weir, I've said it before already, she's great. I really want to see what she does next. I'd love to see her do another horror movie so that we can cover it and talk about her.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Mm-hmm. I was thoroughly impressed with her, though, for sure.
Yeah. One thing I did want to mention is, my last note is about Abigail puppeting Sammy, which we were talking about, and they're kind of both dancing to Danzig's Blood and Tears.
Yeah. So good. What's more vampire-y than dancing to Danzig?
The directors loved the idea of Abigail being a fan of Danzig. Like, because she's so much older than, you know, the 12-year-old child she looks like. They loved that idea.
Yeah.
Again, dance in this movie was fantastic. And props to Catherine Newton. I mean, the way that she pulled that off was great, too.
Yeah, it wasn't just, like, similar dance moves, but it was, like, I could almost, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm sure, like, the two of them probably worked together on choreography to kind of, and you know, to portray the same vibe and movements.
It was so seamless, the way that it transitioned back and forth to each one of them.
Yeah.
So I really appreciated that, too, because, again, sometimes it can be jarring if things don't match up.
Mm-hmm.
So who's next on your list?
So Frank is the last one that I have like a whole section on just him. Because he is kind of the bonus villain of this movie. Which, again, just Dan Stevens is incredible. Love Dan Stevens. It was good to see him. And as much as I love him, I was like, Frank is definitely the scariest person here. Like, even aside from, I was like, he's the one I'm the most worried about being a problem. Like, even from the get-go, it's like, this guy is dark. He's off. But he also had some really great comedic moments. I love one of the things that a laugh out loud moment, which also kind of has to do with Peter, because Kevin Durand, incredible.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Is, you know, Frank walking into the room and Joey holding the gun on him is like, why did you bring us here to kill us? And he goes, what are you talking about? And he's like, what do you think is going on? And Peter speaks up. He goes, I think she thinks you brought us here to kill us. And he goes, fantastic insight, Peter. Going into some of my Peter notes a little bit, I'll go cover his real quick. Was the, you know, what do we know about vampires conversation? Because the first thing Peter says, that they're not real. Which is great. And then as they're like, well, what about this? The garlic, this. And he's going, no, I'm not listening. I don't want to hear. But yeah, so I'll talk about Peter real quick. Like a tangent for him. Because yeah, Kevin Durand, great. Yeah, Peter already washed off Peter on his face.
Dean's last hurrah was taking a marker out of his like fanny pack and drawing a penis on Peter's face.
Which I thought was funny, but then also, like, so he runs in, finds Dean's dead body, and he's talking to Sammy, and it's there. He's like, why is there a dick on your face? He's like, what? And then he's like, go get help. And then the next scene we see him, it's already gone. Like, he had washed it off. And I was like,
no!
Aw, it's like, so that was a bit done for a one-off joke, and that's it?
No,
okay.
It should have been there for a lot longer. I'm sure he used a Sharpie. Dean would have used a Sharpie, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that lasts a lot longer.
Also, I have to notice, I didn't have any subtitles or anything on when I watched this. I didn't use them this time. But anytime he was referring to Rickles, did he keep saying Mr. Wrinkles?
Yes,
that's what it sounded like he was saying.
He did, like, because I did have the captions on. And it was always Wrinkles.
I'm pretty sure he keeps saying Mr. Wrinkles.
Yep, always.
Which is such a great Peter moment. Because, yeah, Kevin Durand as a himbo henchman was pleasing to me. I thought, it's great. It's like, that whole moment is just like, but she said, but we thought you were Valdez. No, she's Valdez. I thought her name was Abigail. Like,
it's kind of like a Drax moment. Like that, it took me to that. And like the other characters, Kevin Durand, he had input and he was able to actually use his native Quebecois accent, which is something he's never been able to do before.
Yeah.
So...
yeah, I need more Kevin Durand in things. He's always great.
I know. He plays a bad guy really well. Like, he really does. I consider him not to be such a... I don't know. He's kind of...
I still remember back in the day, because this goes back so many years ago now, but like, because pre-Jeffrey Dean Morgan in The Walking Dead, when, as a comic book reader, all of us were like speculating, who are they going to cast as Negan when he shows up? And legitimately, Kevin Durand was always one of my top choices. Like,
yeah.
Just, yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I'm glad it went to JDM because I think he did a phenomenal job. But like, I wonder what that would have looked like. Because yeah,
there were a bunch of different names that were tossed around. John Hamm
was another big one. Yeah.
Henry Rollins, who I think,
which is who the comic book was like modeled after.
Yeah, I only got one Walking Dead casting that I wanted, and that was for Beta. I really wanted Ryan Hurst, and it came true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I was like, this is great. This is what I wanted.
Yeah.
And off of Walking Dead tangent and back to Abigail.
Yeah. But yeah, so Frank, we were talking about. Yeah, because that interaction with Peter was hilarious. Then like those are fucking onions line, which was great. As scary as he was, he had some really great funny moments that he was involved in. I get like the bookcase tip where Abigail tells him what to do, and he goes in there, and just the way he delivers that, like, and then there were none. And nothing happens. Which, I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised she's just like playing around with him. Although there was part of me that kind of expected it to trigger a trap that was like a trap door underneath them or something. Yep. And I was like, that would have been diabolical. Maybe they should have done that.
They should have.
Like,
I mean, if you think back to the way that Joey opened up that window at the top, the big circular window, because it was banging. And so she goes in and she kind of opens it up so the light comes in, and later on it's sunlight that they can kind of stand in. That also feeds into the tropes that you get about vampires and sunlight and everything that we've talked about. Yeah,
that trope was interesting. Of course, it was more extreme, where it's not like they just burst into flame, and they literally explode. I was like, the fact that these vampires explode everywhere when they die is interesting. And then it makes me think of Ready or Not. I'm like, yes. Bettinelli-Olpin and Gillett, like, they love to make bad guys explode.
Yep. So simply. I mean, 1 minute Sammy was there, and the next minute she exploded into a million pieces. Yeah.
There was a couple of continuity things I had to point out that were both related to Frank. The first one is when they're standing there after they blow up Sammy with the tray. It looked like he had an earpiece in, like a Bluetooth earpiece almost.
They did have those comms that they were using at one point.
Yeah, but it was like, it was there, but then like the next and then it went back to something, and it went back to him, and he's taking off his glasses, and it was gone. And I was like, there's a weird continuity mistake that I caught. And then also another one is when he's talking to Lambert. There's an angle where Giancarlo Esposito's words and mouth movements do not match up at all. And it really caught me off guard. I was like, that's not what he's saying right there.
No, that usually bothers me. Like, I can usually pick up on that right away when it happens, because I can't stand it.
Yeah, I caught it on that one.
That doesn't work. It doesn't bother me when we're watching foreign films. I'm fine with it not matching up.
Yeah.
But
that's different.
This, no, I'm not a fan. Sometimes I think I have to reload YouTube or reload the program to get it to go, like, to line it up again, I guess.
No, it was a case of like poorly synced ADR that just got overlooked or something, I think, which... That's fine. I'm not going to dock it too many points off this movie, because overall it was still great. It was just one thing that I was like, oh, I noticed that one.
Well, it's a good thing we're not doing our ratings anymore.
Yeah. So yeah, then we get the Lambert reveal that he's also a vampire. He's working for Lazar and Abigail, but then he has these plans to turn Frank and then have them team up to take out the Lazars together and take over their empire. Which Joey shouldn't have been surprised that he went for it, because he's a scumbag.
Exactly. Also, not surprising that he turned on Lambert.
Yeah, immediately double crosses him. And then, of course, the stake, and then he blows up, because that's what they love doing. Which then led to, I will say, Dan Stevens looked super badass with sharp teeth, and then the glasses covered in blood that almost look like sunglasses. And then even though like it was like a cream colored shirt he was wearing, the way the blood splattered all over it almost made it look like a shiny leather jacket.
Yep.
And then he had the slick back hair with it, and I was like, fucking Lost Boys over here. What's going on? You know, like.
Oh man, it's true. Yeah. I mean, well, they do love to blow things up. They love for things to explode. And it's just something they like. They don't want things like this to be like a simple thing. They want it to be vicious. They want it to be big and powerful. And it always is. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then Frank, we've established throughout the movie that he has this hunger for power. That was one of his big downfalls as a cop, and then all this. And so, like, we see him then when he makes that transformation. Like, being a vampire was definitely his calling. He is loving this power over people and over the situation. And then he goes 0 to 100 so fast, where it's like, not only am I a vampire and I love this, but then he's just like, also, now, Joey, I'm going to turn you into a vampire puppet, and then we're going to go murder your son. And it's like,
was
what
so
an insane
horrible.
leap. Like, what is...
What? Yeah.
Oh, no.
He's harboring these evil, horrible feelings
Holy
about
crap, yeah.
Joey and her family, and it's like...
Where did that come from?
You didn't even know her before today.
Right.
And yet, you want to do these things, and she did nothing to you.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you acting like this? Oh, man. Yeah. Frank is definitely a villain.
Mm-hmm.
He may show up on a list later this season.
We'll see.
We'll see. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's with all I've got for him. I don't know if you've got any notes.
No,
there.
we've covered everything that I had for Frank.
All right. So yeah, so then just other random notes about other characters. Throw them out. Like, so yeah, Angus Cloud was not somebody I had seen anything of him, and I was familiar with the name, and I had forgotten. So what happened is I saw him and his name, and I was like, I'm familiar with the name and the face, but I was like, he's from Euphoria. I've never watched Euphoria.
Me either.
I've never seen him in anything, but however. And then it wasn't until the end of the movie where the In Loving Memory of Angus Cloud, and then I had forgotten, and it like flushed back into my head, and I was like, that is why I was so familiar with the name and face. Is, again, I hadn't seen anything he was in.
Yeah.
But I remembered seeing reports of his passing and the news reports and stuff. I was like, that's where that was. Like, that's why that was so familiar to me.
Yeah.
Even though I hadn't seen him before.
He had finished all of his everything for this movie. Mm-hmm. And then the strike happened and production got shut down. He actually signed an autograph, that cloud that we saw at the end that they drew out. He signed an autograph for someone on the crew. And then Melissa Barrera had it printed on T-shirts for everybody, the cast, the crew, and everything when filming wrapped. Yeah. So that was actually his, like, he wrote his name with a cloud.
Yeah, which is cool.
And I haven't watched Euphoria. I've heard really good things about it. Zendaya's in it. Mm-hmm. I know they're waiting for a third season, and they just seem to keep waiting, and I'm like, man.
I guess there's some other, like, younger kid who's in it that's, like, really good, and I only know that because he was in the last season of Umbrella Academy, and people were like, oh my god, it's the kid from Euphoria, and I was like, okay, well, he's good here, I guess, like, I don't know.
Yeah, Sydney Sweeney, too, really broke out. She was on The Handmaid's Tale, and she really broke out in Euphoria. Like, now she's a mainstay.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, Dean, the character, aside from Angus Cloud, Joey was very right about him not being a professional, because I was like, the only thing he's done this whole movie is just be stoned and horny. Yes. That's kind of just his whole vibe. And it fully tracked that he was the first to die, because he was kind of a moron. But then we see again later, and I was like, on here we thought he was just some useless, uneducated idiot. But no, he just needed to get out of his own head a little bit, and now he's a beautiful dancer.
Oh, goodness. So good, so well trained. Who knew that He
Right.
must have studied at Juilliard or something. Yeah.
7 years at Juilliard. Nobody gets that reference, but if you do, it's amazing. If you do, you do.
Oh, man.
So yeah, Sammy a little bit. She was kind of strange to me, like too smiley.
Yeah.
But that was kind of like her thing. So I suppose like it's like okay. I did have one thing. Do her tattoos on her hands say "fuck mom"? Because that's weird.
What. That's what it looks like.
Yeah,
That's
okay,
what it looks
sure.
like.
And then yeah, her getting bit, and then waiting to see how that played out. I like the little moment of tension where she's like, "Can I get in the sun with you guys?" And she's, "Here it goes," and then it's like, "Oh, okay, I'm fine."
I half expected her hand to blow off. I'll
Right.
admit it. I really did.
Mhm. I did. Well, she was like, "The hand was fine," and then she steps back in, and she's like, Then I thought the whole thing was gonna go, but no, not yet. And then yeah, Giancarlo Esposito talked about Kevin Durant as Peter. And then Rickles, not a whole lot. Other than he got taken out very quick and unceremoniously, and he's out of the movie now.
Yeah, and I thought, they were playing with chemistry between him and Joey.
There's like almost a thing where I was like, do they know each other from before?
Me too.
But they're not saying it because they can't let anybody else know.
Yeah. And I thought he was going to kiss her at one point. And then I'm like, okay, so we're going to go there. And then the next thing you knew, he was dead.
Yeah.
And it was weird because you heard this sound, and then he's standing there, and she walks towards him, and I'm like, I know he's been bitten. His neck's probably sliced off. Who knows what's happened?
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, I thought the way he was standing and his body was like jerking a little bit. It just made me think of so many of those infestation movies where they get infested by roaches.
It had almost like a clicker vibe from The Last of Us.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then she looks at him and he falls down. And that's the end. Man. This movie, this movie I did not expect to be what it was. I just knew it was a newer one, and I thought it'd be great for us to cover something that was newer. I had no idea that it was going to be funny, and that it was going to be one of those ones that I love when we cover, because our conversation is you just laugh, because there are things that happen that you're not expecting.
So that's it. Got everything kind of covered and done. And
yeah, I mean,
good. Yeah, I enjoyed this one a lot. I didn't know what I was going into exactly, and it wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be in all the best ways.
No, it was a lot. It was just basically Abigail playing with her food, as she said.
Yeah, so yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Oh,
and there goes the feedback phone. So we'll have to see what others had to say about this one. I'm curious.
Yeah.
We'll get that. All right, we do have just a little bit of feedback this week, and of course, this first one comes to us from our lovely, lovely listener, Catherine, who's always coming through for us. We always love it, and since it's a really long one, I'm going to let you read it, Daphne.
Okay, yeah, sure. So Catherine says, I've wanted to watch Abigail for a while just because of Alicia Weir and her performance in the Matilda remake. When my daughter was 3, she spent hours trying to imitate Matilda's impressive dance moves. Abigail's choreography was beautiful, leaping over dead bodies and pirouetting around her next victim. I was not expecting to be rooting for the vampire ballerina the entire time. And I also wasn't expecting to see so many other faces like Gus from Breaking Bad and both David and Gabriel from Legion. My only complaint is the number of times Abigail seemed to die only to come back at the last minute. But it did set up some really fun scenes with Joey. Run for Your Lives has been on a roll this season with movies that I've never seen, but really enjoyed, and Abigail is no exception.
Ah, awesome. Thanks.
That's so cool.
Appreciate that. Thanks for watching along with us, and it's like when it's stuff that you haven't seen, that you're taking time out of your week to watch a movie and give us your thoughts. Like that means way more than you probably even realize. So we really do appreciate it.
It means a ton, Catherine. Thank you so much for continuing this Run for Your Lives journey with us every week. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Which that's usually how we wrap up the feedback section, is like word for word exactly what we just said. But there is one more little bit of feedback here from our friend Erica, who also has a really long one. Says, I'd love to see an origin story about Abigail.
Me too.
Yeah, no, I actually agree. Like that could be really interesting for sure. Because who knows how long she's really been living, and all of the different people that she's, trapped into this situation, and stuff that she's done as the hitman for her father or whatever. So yeah, there's a lot of story stuff that could be in there.
I like the idea for her being the hitman for her father. I feel like she only does it to bad people, at least for the most part. So I have to support that. And I too rooted for Abigail in the movie. Well, if you'd like to submit feedback like Erica or Catherine, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Run for Your Lives Podcast. You can email us at runforyourlivespodcast@gmail.com. If you're enjoying the show, tell your friends. We are available on all other podcast players, including Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. And go to runforyourlivespodcast.com for all the links that you'll ever need. And give us a review on Apple Podcasts, as that's the best way to share the love and get us out there even more. We really appreciate it.
We definitely do. Of course, speaking of sharing the love, got to give those shout outs to things going on in the Podcastica universe around us. Of course, my other podcast, Strange Indeed, is wrapped up on Sweet Tooth, and we're sitting back and taking another little break. Hopefully not as long as the last break that we took, but we're relax a little bit, assessing what we want to do. Umbrella Academy Season 4 is out. I've talked with Rima. It's nothing concrete, nothing confirmed, but we may return to the Umbrella Academy in some form or fashion in the future. So if you're a fan of that, we've had some people reach out and ask us about that. So if you're wondering, stay tuned to the Strange Indeed feed. And then aside from that, we've got some of our other staple shows that are coming out later in the fall. So definitely stay tuned. We'll definitely get onto those. We got You, the final season, coming up in sometime in the late 2024. We don't have an exact date, but yeah, I think the Dexter prequel is supposed to be in December or something. So we've talked about some of that stuff, so we'll be back soon. Don't worry. But aside from that, lots of great Podcastica stuff going on with the cast of us. Jason and Karen, but not the original Karen from Jason and Karen of the Walking Dead cast. Karen Shee is joining Jason on this Walking Dead rewatch this week, as they're covering Season 3, Episode 6, Hounded. So you can check that out. Been doing a great Walking Dead rewatch there. Speaking of rewatches, you can check out Ben and Kristen over on the Revisited podcast, as they are, finishing up. We're getting close to the end of Ted Lasso, Season 3, Episode 10, International Break. So we're about to wrap up their Ted Lasso coverage. They're getting close. And then The Good Place coming up next for them. I don't know if they're taking a little break between or not, but stay tuned over there. Always some great shows going on in Revisited. We have Let It Rip, the Bear cast with Lucy and Peter, talking The Bear, of course, this week, episodes 5 and 6 of Season 3, Children and Napkins. I will say, I'm not spoiling anything, but for fans of The Bear, like, Napkins is the Forks of this season, if that makes sense to anybody. I really, really enjoyed that episode, and I thought it was incredible. Great backstory episode. A lot of great John Bernthal in that one. Just the best of him. So check that out. So it's great episodes. Definitely check out their coverage. Lucy and Peter are crushing it. Cobra Kai cast, definitely check that out as well. Cobra Kai is in their final season as well. Rima, Richard, and Jason covering Season 6, Episode 3, Sleeper last week, and then they should have the Episode 4 up this next week. Still wrapping those. There's only 5 episodes out right now, so they've been just taking them one at a time, so they're getting close to this first section of Cobra Kai, and then we gotta wait till like November for the next section, the next 5 episodes of that. But it's been a great final season so far. I'm excited to see where it goes. And of course, lastly, outside of Podcastica, always giving some love to our friends over at TV Podcast Industries. So we had Derek and John covering Deadpool and Wolverine this week. That was great to listen to. They're always great in their Marvel movie and show coverage, especially with Deadpool. Just so much fun to listen to them talk and laugh about all the insanity that was that movie. Just go watch Deadpool and Wolverine if you haven't already. What's wrong with you? Get on it. It's so good.
It's such a trip in all the most amazing ways.
So yeah, great to check out there. And then also, lastly, gonna give that shout out again to the Buffalo podcast. If you just need more of me and Daphne alongside our friends Jeff and Jerry, we're still having a lot of fun over there, just talking, hanging out, playing goofy games. It's been a lot of fun, just coming up with crazy ideas and things to do. And we've got more fun ideas in the pipeline and some more great episodes coming your way. So it's a quick 30-minute episode. You can just kind of listen and laugh along as we're ridiculous and we love every second of it. So go check that out. But of course, outside of all that, you can always come back to Run for Your Lives. We got good stuff for you every week, unless we're on a break between seasons. But we're not, because this season is starting strong and we're going. So we'll be back here next week with something for you. What are we doing, Daphne?
Well, a former baseball player is forced into early retirement due to a degenerative illness, and he purchases a home with a pool so his family can finally put down roots. Their lives are upended when a malevolent presence lurking in their backyard pool begins to haunt them. We are discussing Bryce McGuire's 2024 film Night Swim, and it's quite a movie.
Yes, Blumhouse production, so there's been some interesting stuff coming out of there lately that we've talked about, so should be a fun one.
Yeah, I think Blumhouse has definitely been exceeding my expectations lately.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they're hit or miss, but I feel like they're moving into the hit column more than the miss lately. So, yeah, this was an interesting discussion.
Yeah, definitely check it out.
Well, with that, we've reached the end of our episode. Thanks for listening. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And if you have to run, you better run for your lives.
Bye-bye.